Again, delighted to be here sharing the Blue Box story with all of you. I wanted to start off and just give a brief introduction on myself and my background. So I started with infrastructure in 1997. So this was a long time before cloud computing was a technology. I founded Blue Box from my college dorm room in 2003. So the company was 12 years old when IBM acquired it in June. Blue Box raised $22 million in venture financing over beginning in 2012 to take the historical platform that we had built and turn it into an OpenStack product offering. While I was CEO of Blue Box for about 11 years, I'm a technologist at my core, and so I wrote much of the original code in the offering, much to the disappointment of our engineers. IBM acquired Blue Box on June 2nd, so we are about for just over 60 days being part of the IBM family. I'm very excited to be part of that. And I have a wonderful wife and two wonderful kids. So I wanted to go back to this slide, which I used in the keynote, to talk a little bit about IBM's cloud vision. We had the fortunate opportunity to speak with many companies who are involved in OpenStack as part of our acquisition process. And through that experience, found that IBM had the most compelling and comprehensive cloud strategy. If you match IBM's expertise with enterprise organizations, their incredible technical talent, and their global footprint of data centers powered by SoftLayer, you've got a foundation that I think is ripe to develop the next generation of cloud technologies on top of. This notion of local, dedicated, and public, removing the location from the equation of where customers can consume cloud, and making that experience as similar as possible, whether it be from a public cloud or a private cloud, I think is a really interesting way to approach these types of deployments. Using OpenStack as the foundation for that infrastructure layer allows IBM and its customers to have an open technology and a platform of consistency between that local, that dedicated, and that public installation. On top of OpenStack, through Bluemix, we're using Cloud Foundry to bring platform as a service to market. And then customers are bringing their applications. This combination allows enterprises and developers to focus their energy on building differentiation in the applications and not focus their energy on the infrastructure itself to support that technology. So the IBM Cloud value proposition of one cloud architecture, and one cloud user experience across platform as a service, infrastructure as a service, in local, dedicated, and public, I thought was a very compelling and exciting story. So again, Blue Box was acquired recently, and our original vision was to bring private cloud anywhere in the world in under an hour. As I looked at the private cloud marketplace over the last couple of years, one thing stood out, and that was most vendors were promising implementation times that measured in weeks or months. And to me, that didn't make sense when we were talking about cloud technologies. Cloud was about getting an experience and delivering value as quickly as possible. And with timelines that were measured in weeks or months, that wasn't an effective solution. We thought we could leverage the technology that we had built at Blue Box and use that to speed private cloud delivery to the market. As I also mentioned in the keynote, I wanted to bring the experience of public cloud back to those using private cloud. And if I think about public cloud, when I go use that technology, I get an API or a user interface without having to worry about what sits behind it. I'm not deciding what hardware to run it on. I'm not deciding around the network. I'm not deciding which technology to use. I'm simply using that platform, and I'm trusting the vendor has made the right decisions around how to provision and operate that platform. With private cloud, and particularly with OpenStack, that hasn't been the case. The operator, the end user, has had to decide the hardware, the network, the software, and the implementation for that cloud technology, which has made that implementation very challenging for many enterprises. So at Blue Box, we were looking to bring that public cloud experience to private cloud, bringing the as-a-service model on premises. I wanted to touch base on this notion again, as I briefly mentioned it in the keynote. When we raised money in 2012 to bring this product to market, we looked at what the offerings in the market had. Public clouds had a number of benefits. Elasticity, being able to grow your footprint or contract your footprint based on usage. The OpEx billing model, paying a monthly fee for service versus a software licensing model or paying for hardware. Ease of use, so public clouds are widely supported. Technologies are written to integrate with them, and the interfaces make sense. And time to implement. A customer can go choose a public cloud and be running that same day. Private clouds, on the other hand, had many advantages in their own right. Data sovereignty. As an organization, I want to know where my data sits. Environment control from an administrative perspective, being able to control who has access to my cloud and what they're doing with it. Cost predictability, being able to know how much I was going to pay next month, 6 months from now, or in a year. And lastly, hybrid capability, being able to have that cloud in my own data center next to the applications that I'm already running, allows me to integrate with those applications in a way that is more challenging with public cloud. So we looked at those 4 characteristics on each side. We thought we could bring them together into one unified offering. That offering we coined Private Cloud as a Service because we brought it to market in our data centers, hosted by Blue Box, managed by Blue Box, providing all of those benefits from a public cloud perspective, but it was a true private cloud. The infrastructure is dedicated to a customer, which gives you all of those private cloud benefits. So we launched Blue Box Dedicated almost 2 years ago at the OpenStack Summit in Hong Kong. We've had the product in market now with production customers on it for the last 2 years. And as following the IBM acquisition, have taken all of the benefits of the technology we have and have merged them with the enterprise implementation that IBM created called ICOS into one unified product. We start with what we call the Express architecture. The goal was to get an implementation that was as affordable as possible so organizations could start with a very easy place with OpenStack. Oftentimes with on-premise clouds, customers would need to spend millions of dollars, in US dollars, to get started. We wanted an environment that was as little as $6,000 a month for customers to get started. We also wanted an environment that would scale. So once a customer began, and they proved that this technology was helping them, we wanted that same footprint to be able to go into production with larger implementations. And so we architected this solution to grow with a customer and their usage. As I mentioned earlier, this is a true private cloud. It's not a virtual cloud where there are other customers sharing hardware, but the implementation is dedicated to a single customer. So within the SoftLayer data centers, hardware is deployed and allocated directly to each individual customer. And so each environment is isolated using bare metal. As I mentioned, customers can start small and then grow as their requirements grow. In SoftLayer, we're using multi-tenant networking, so SoftLayer's networking footprint, but we use VLAN and layer 3 isolation to keep the networks separate from customers, so there's no shared networking. Because this is a true private cloud, we have a defensible network border where customers can use the firewalls that are deployed with the solution to VPN into the environment and connect the environment with their local data center. Or they can use SoftLayer's direct link capability to have a point-to-point connection between their data center and SoftLayer and Blue Box. Today, the Blue Box offering is using the Juno OpenStack release. We have, I mentioned, a converged architecture with icons that is being released in November of this year. That release will be based on Kilo, the OpenStack release. And we bundle with it a number of OpenStack services. At its core are the base building blocks of OpenStack: Nova for compute, Neutron for networking, Keystone for security, Horizon for the user interface, Glance for image management, and Cinder for block storage. We then have additional add-ons like Swift for object storage that customers can purchase. And that integrated release coming in November will include Heat for automation and templating, and Celiometer for telemetry and capacity measurement. From an architecture perspective, one of the key design tenets was to ensure that the solution was highly available. We did not want a cloud that could fail for customers, and so we designed a solution with no single points of failure. The initial implementation of a Blue Box cloud environment requires 3 dedicated servers, and the control plane that runs OpenStack sits on the same hardware that the data plane where the VMs and customer deploys are operated. That allows us to get the footprint down to those 3 servers. It gets a usable set of resources for that customer at a very inexpensive price point. Every OpenStack service, as part of the deployment, is deployed in a highly available configuration, and they're split between the first 2 controllers. So if the first controller fails or has a hardware problem, the second controller is able to take over the OpenStack services, and the APIs and the user interface for OpenStack will continue to function without interruption. This model allows us to get that initial footprint down to 3 nodes, but it also allows us to scale the environment up through the addition of dedicated controllers. So you can see in this model where the customer virtual machines sit on those first 2 controllers. With dedicated controllers, those physical pieces of hardware are running only OpenStack, not customer workloads. In addition to dedicated OpenStack controllers, we're able to split out the networking controllers into their own set based on scalability requirements. So the goal, again, was to start with a small footprint and ensure that footprint could scale as customer usage of the environment scaled. This allows customers to get in and put development or test workloads on the OpenStack environment, prove that it works for their business, and then figure out how to bring in production workloads as the time is right. As Mark mentioned this morning, open source is a big component of IBM's strategy, and at Blue Box, that's no different. We believe that the differentiation we bring to OpenStack is not in OpenStack itself, but is in the operational capability that we bring to running that OpenStack environment. So all of our OpenStack code and technology is open source and is available on our GitHub site. Ursula is the name of the tool that we use to orchestrate and install OpenStack. It also provides all of our upgrades for customers. We have that available on the site, and so an organization could take Ursula and use that to implement their own cloud in their own facility, unsupported by Blue Box, but as a way to experiment with the technology. Again, we think the value we bring is not necessarily solely in Ursula or in OpenStack, but is in running the cloud once it's up, once it's installed, bringing that public cloud experience to private cloud. GIFwrap is another tool that we've produced and have open sourced. GIFwrap is a mechanism to take all of the code that is required to install OpenStack itself and build an artifact that can be easily replicated from server to server to server. The key there is to make sure each server runs the exact same set of code that every other server runs, so that we have consistency in the platform. That consistency is incredibly important to Blue Box and to our customers for a number of reasons. But the first being, and arguably the most important, being this notion of a network effect. So remember, Blue Box runs these environments for each one of our customers. When you're operating a cloud, things often go wrong. And if you are operating it by yourself, when you fix what's gone wrong, you fixed it in only your environment. At Blue Box, when we discover something has gone awry in a cloud and we fix it, we're able to push that fix to every customer environment that is operating. And so with each new customer that we add, we've increased the amount of learning that we have access to, which means each customer environment becomes more resilient and more reliable. This is a key distinction that you only can get when operating with an as-a-service provider. The distributions, organizations that sell distributions, are forced to take learning through support tickets or troubleshooting customer environments and aren't able to push those updates out with the same velocity that Blue Box is. If you think back over the last 6 to 12 months about all the security vulnerabilities that have occurred, say with OpenSSL, or issues in OpenStack that have been published, or simply the fact that OpenStack releases come out every 6 months, you can start to see the benefits and the use cases of being able to push updates consistently and reliably to all of our customers. From a pricing perspective, this is the Blue Box dedicated offering as it sits on SoftLayer. We have 2 base level configurations. Those configurations differ based on resources. So the number of CPUs, and these are physical CPUs, memory, or disk capacity that is available in that private cloud for customers to use. Our standard cluster has 92 CPU cores, 384 gigs of memory, and 3 terabytes of disk that customers are able to utilize for their workloads. The enterprise offering simply doubles that resource pool to 184 cores, 768 gigs of memory, and 6 terabytes of disk. Both of those environments grow by adding in additional capacity node by node. So you can see here the standard node, an enterprise node, additions at the bottom. Lastly, dedicated controllers, as I mentioned, are an option. This pricing is per month and is delivered as a service. It includes all of the hardware, all of the network capacity inside of SoftLayer, and OpenStack management. So customers, again, get a pool of resources that they can deploy their workloads into without having to worry about the individual pieces that go into everything underneath. I mentioned this in the keynote, why do customers buy from Blue Box? I want to talk about actual customer case studies, who's been buying and why. My first example is a company called Big Fish Games. They're a Seattle-based gaming company that publishes third-party social games. They had a big investment in an existing data center in Seattle, and they wanted to leverage that capacity while extending it with cloud resources. They had tried public clouds, but the latency between the facilities often created challenges, and the pricing was not consistent, making it hard to project their budgets. This customer has one Blue Box cloud, cross-connected into their data center using redundant 10 gig fiber. They're able to leverage their database footprint, their load balancing footprint, and their egress IP, so all of the investment they've already made, while getting the benefit of application compute managed by a third party tied into that footprint. So when we talk hybrid cloud, this is an excellent example of what a customer can do with a Blue Box cloud implementation. The second example is a US media company. This organization went through and rewrote over 300 line of business applications, some even written in COBOL, into about 120 web-based applications running on Cloud Foundry. They wanted a provider that, one, could support Cloud Foundry, two, could operate OpenStack and provide a consistent experience, and three, would support that experience with a high level of customer satisfaction, because this was a production workload powering their entire business. They also wanted reliable and consistent pricing, which they struggled to get out of public clouds, and control over the entire environment, so their IT organization could ensure compliance with IT policies and procedures. Lastly, I want to highlight FinSphere. FinSphere is a financial services organization. When you travel abroad and you use your credit cards, oftentimes those credit cards get declined because of fraud prevention mechanisms. With FinSphere, you have an application on your phone, and when you swipe your credit card, FinSphere, the Visa pings FinSphere, finds out where your phone is, and if it's within 5 kilometers of that Visa transaction, your transaction is not declined. So it solves a lot of travel challenges with companies. FinSphere has 2 environments deployed with Blue Box, one in Seattle and one in London. They're doing that to serve a global audience using a consistent cloud platform. They wanted data isolation because of the type of transaction data they're dealing with. They also wanted a cloud service catalog to be able to gain advantages from automating their workflow. And they wanted bare metal integration to be able to run their database servers on bare metal and tie that in with a cloud environment. As I mentioned in the keynote, last week we announced general availability of Blue Box Cloud Dedicated on SoftLayer. This was an effort that we spent considerable resources in immediately following the acquisition. We knew with IBM and with the SoftLayer footprint of 27 data centers around the globe, being able to complete this integration and make Blue Box Cloud available to organizations around the globe was critical to driving success for customers and success for Blue Box. That release went out last week and was supported very much by the US press and the international press. It was a great example of what a startup and IBM can do together, combining the resources and engineering capability of Blue Box with the footprint and expertise with IBM. But Dedicated is just a start. Between now and the end of the year, we're bringing Blue Box Local to market. Blue Box Local takes the same technologies and brings them into a customer's data center. So driving a common set of OpenStack services, a common operational model with tethered management means that inside of a customer data center, Blue Box and IBM will manage OpenStack in the same way that we manage OpenStack on top of SoftLayer, giving a customer the same OpenStack experience they would get on top of SoftLayer with Blue Box dedicated, but inside of the walls of their facility alongside their existing data center footprint. This creates the opportunity for true hybrid implementations between existing workloads in a customer data center and a Blue Box local installation, or between a Blue Box local installation and a Blue Box dedicated installation in SoftLayer. Because we're using the same code and the same technologies, the experience and the integration and the APIs are identical. And we think that's a powerful opportunity for enterprises looking to innovate at the infrastructure layer. The final go-to-market for hardware is still in works, but the example here is pretty consistent. So compute will follow a similar model to the Blue Box enterprise deployment on SoftLayer. Object storage will be an option along with block storage in the racks. The core network will be based on 10 gig internet, and this implementation will sit adjacent to an enterprise network connected over layer 3 and BGP. So we're not trying to integrate into an existing enterprise network, but instead be adjacent to that enterprise network, which we think will really help simplify the installation of these deployments. One of the key components for Blue Box is Box Panel, which is our remote management platform that allows us to treat that local installation as if it were just another data center like the Blue Box dedicated installation. As I mentioned, that offering is coming to market between now and the end of the year. And we're engaged today with early adopter customers who are excited with the capability that that can bring to their organization. So with that, I will close and say thank you for having me here. We'll be back in about 3 or 4 weeks, or maybe a little longer, for OpenStack Summit, which is in Tokyo again at the end of October. Look forward to meeting many more of you there, and thank you for your time.